Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sovereign Village Project and to the Community Hour. We're trying something different. We're trying to do this outside here at the new homestead for the first time, so we'll see how well that goes. It's a little bit windy and a couple of rain clouds have gone over, but so far I think we're good. So looking forward to doing this not inside the house, which is completely covered in drywall dust right now. This is definitely more of a construction site right now than a homestead, but it's slowly changing. We've got the chickens out back here trying out their new poultry netting. We just got electrified poultry netting, so we're very excited about that because we're about to really start the rotational grazing and really start adding some fertility to this land. Right now we're running them over that. I just did the video about that bare yard septic area that we're working on. Actually, they're working on. So they're going to be running around doing lots of fertilization for us out there and just being their best chicken they can be. But today's topic, once again, we're kind of not doing one we talked about. We keep getting excited about new topics and they're kind of backing up here. But we thought it'd be fun to talk about healthcare and health on the homestead. That's a topic we're both really passionate about. We kind of both have little side backgrounds in various parts of the health world. I was a healthcare specialist or a medic in the National Guard when I was in the military. And then Gabby is kind of in the midst of training for becoming a personal trainer. You could probably tell that better.
Yeah, and I've always just been into competitive sports and challenges, and
she runs like a marathon every other day.
Marathons, and I've done a half Ironman, all sorts of different things. So always have been interested in endurance challenges.
And we really think that health and thinking about health goes hand in hand with the homesteading lifestyle. It's really crucial. A lot of us are doing homesteading because of health. A lot of people that I know have gone to a more natural way of living because they were having so many health problems. And once they started removing all of the processed foods and the pesticide-laden GMOs and all of that from their diet and replacing it with actual nutritive food that they grew or bought from farmers who grew it regeneratively, their health started to incredibly improve. I know we've both really experienced this back at the start of the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it. Before we knew, how serious things were or who the major players were, back in January of that year, we were watching what was happening, and we were, not sure the severity or the reality of the virus. And so our first thought was we need to get our immune systems in order. And so we started growing food as quickly as we could and started learning to forage. And we got to the point where just about every single meal had something foraged in it. Because once we started to research things like dandelion or plantain and the incredible nutritional abundance inside of a wild foraged plant, we realized that was the single best thing we could do. We were also surrounded by elderberry and a lot of things that are really nutritive. And so when we started doing that for the sake of the virus, we also just found our general health improving in a way that
allergies were better.
Allergies gone. My allergies went away completely. Like every once in a while, I'll just have a tiny inkling of one when the pollen is high. But like I used to have terrible allergies, gone completely from mainly eating. That was when we started eating dead nettle all the time, which is a natural antihistamine. But we just watched our health completely just turn around, and not just our health. I feel like my mind, my critical thinking,
more energy.
My energy levels, it all changed when I started. And we're only beginning on this journey. We're still eating some processed foods, especially as we transition to this new homestead. We don't have a kitchen. Everything is covered in drywall dust in the house. We're really living out of boxes right now. So we've been forced to go back to a little bit of, rice mixes and various things. We're doing the best we can, but we're having to buy processed food. And I certainly feel it. It also is probably because we're already exhausted from working so hard. But health is a big part of the reason why we homestead. But there's also, I think, another side of things, which is that we may not always have the same access to healthcare that we have now. As we watch this world become increasingly totalitarian and we see this bifurcation happening where there are people who will do anything to continue to be able to access the conveniences of the system, then there's those of us who will do anything to stay free. You realize that when you look at how things are going with masks and potential vaccination requirements and all of that, you realize that people like us who don't want to engage in that may not have access to services, because we can look to the CCP's China to really see a blueprint for our future. And we see how they do the social credit system. And what they really do is they take away your access to things like public transportation, jobs, money. All you got to do is read Revelation and you know how it works. Basically, if you don't do as you're told and put whatever they want into or onto your body, they're going to restrict our access to services. And one of those crucial services is healthcare, probably. And so we need to figure out how to address the healthcare issue. What do we do if we're on the homestead and we break an arm we get an infection, somebody's pregnant, any number of healthcare problems that might pop up. How are we going to address those if we can't access the normal healthcare system? Hey, New York Redneck is in chat. Hello. Good seeing you in here. Always the first, I feel like. You're always you must just have a good, this must be a good time on a Sunday. Saying, buy a juicer. Such a good boost to health. I would like to get a juicer. That'd be fun. We were drinking a really good juice today, actually. A juicer would,
a good blender.
Yeah.
Not a juicer.
A juicer would really fit well into the permaculture homestead because so often you have an abundance of strange foods. You know, you never know what you're going to have a lot of. You might have a lot of sumac or a lot of blackberry, a lot of carrots. A juicer would really enable you to use whatever the heck you have, especially the stuff that's maybe past its prime a little bit, or got partially eaten by bugs but is still okay. Excellent candidates for a juicer. So yeah, I would love to get one for sure. But anyway, so as we talk about healthcare in a rural area, it's especially crucial because as Agenda 21 kicks in places like this, you see rural hospitals getting closed. Whether or not that's related, we don't know. But the one in the county right next to us just shut down. And so everybody in that county, they have no hospital at all, no hospital option. They have
to drive to Nashville for really crucial surgeries,
2 hours away,
appointments, and
So I think what we need to do is really reimagine healthcare and how we're going to access it. So something we've talked about for our plan, our healthcare plan, is first of all having a plan, deciding to take complete ownership,
like backup plans, and basically like a plan A, plan B, a plan C. Here are all the different options for kind of those core injuries that could happen or big, health moments that you would have.
Especially for emergencies, because by planning this out and having maybe a binder full of phone numbers and contacts and a plan in place, when the emergency strikes, we're going to be making better decisions. So, for example, I break my leg, and by having a plan in place, perhaps I avoid a ambulance, which is a massive expense. Once they have you over a barrel, they will just send you an unbelievably high bill. And I may know which hospitals are better. If I have to go to a mainstream hospital, maybe I know a private doctor option, and I know which ones will give me a better deal for cash because I don't really do health insurance or anything like that. Having that plan in place is going to help us when we're in crisis mode and it's really hard to make decisions. If you can open a binder, boom, there's your phone number. It's going to make things a lot easier. And also part of our plan is we want to be able to escalate our healthcare. So, for example, if I have a health problem, we want to first maybe visit an herbalist and see what they have to say. Or if it was, say, a back thing, the first thing we do is hit up a chiropractor, an acupuncturist. Start with the lower level things where they're not invasive and they're not requiring drugs for their treatments most of the time.
And I think another thing that this plan requires is to tackle things sooner than you think. So once you start feeling like there's a problem with your body, whether it's like an ache in your knee or something like that, don't let it keep going because then it will just get worse and worse and worse and you will need that.
Which is what I do. I'm terrible
that extra care. So I think a thing we're trying to get better at is diagnosing those things earlier when it is easier to find a natural kind of option to provide that solution.
New York Redneck says fasting cures all. Fasting is a fascinating thing. My mother did a lot of fasting. She still does a lot of fasting, and swears by it. I haven't really done much of that yet. One of these days I'll delve down that road and try fasting out. I've heard a lot of people say good things about it, not just for healing purposes, but as well for spiritual purposes and for clearing your head. I've heard a lot of people say that it really enhances their decision making, which makes sense. Your body's probably saying, hey, I'm really hungry. Time to enter into survival mode, and you're perhaps a little more receptive to information and quicker at the decision making. But yeah, I haven't tried fasting myself, but I've heard really good things about it from those who have. But yeah, so like Gabby said, trying to tackle healthcare problems.
More preventative.
Yeah, more preventative.
Proactive.
But speaking of proactive and preventative, I would say that's the biggest key. When you think about your healthcare, the number one thought should be, how do I prevent that? And that's obviously everything we're doing. That's what this lifestyle is all about, is how do we eat the proper things? How do we put the proper things in our body? How do we get the exercise we need? How do we engage in nature and keep a healthy mind and a healthy body? And I really think that's getting pretty extreme with the homesteading lifestyle is what we really need to be doing. Not just raising a few goats and having a little garden, but like truly being self-sufficient. That reason alone is enough to be mostly food self-sufficient. Never mind the prepping side of things or the liberty side of things. I I could have none of those sides to my personality, and I would still think it was crucial to grow as much of my own food as I possibly can, just for the healthcare reasons alone, because it may be a lot of time commitment, it may be a lot of money for those who spend money on their gardening systems, but is it anything compared to the cost of healthcare? It's a drop in the bucket. It pales in comparison. Like, healthcare is obscenely expensive. And simply living a life closer to the land is going to save you so many healthcare expenses. So from just a purely monetary point of view, it makes sense. And I think that's where homesteading and gardening really pencils out, and eating organic and buying from farmers, and adding that increased cost to your life. It's really decreasing your
sometimes
costs.
it's not the money coming in, it's the money that you're saving.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just saving down the road.
Costs that you aren't incurring.
And it's like you're talking about a very small monetary investment into good food right now, which is a massive, massive healthcare savings later in life. I've known a lot of people who were farmers or homesteaders who just never went to the doctor. I mean, literally never. I've known elderly farmers and stuff. I've met people both here and back in Oregon, and they've never been inside of a doctor's office, and they just live close to the land, and they just eat what they grow, and it's just never been a concern for them. Do you want to talk, Gabby, about healthcare in the community a little bit? Because I know it's a passion of yours. We live here in Hickman County, Tennessee, and we have big problems with obesity, diabetes, drug use, but really the eating habits are really bad. Most of this county is a food desert. There are a lot of areas where the only stores around are convenience store gas stations or Dollar Generals, which have no fresh food and just mostly garbage synthetic food all over their shelves.
Yeah. I think we as food producers and growers need to be those educators in the community. You know, you don't necessarily have to have health credentials to tell someone that eating a vegetable is healthier than buying a pastry at the store, you know.
Wait, what makes you qualified to talk about healthcare?
Yeah.
That's the attitude now.
But I think when I say educate people, like, for example, I went to our local farmers market yesterday morning, and one of our friends has started, Lisa, she started putting out, she had like 3 recipes on the table with, you know, obviously it was referencing vegetables that she was selling. And I thought that was an interesting kind of way to, you know, add some more value to your product, but also to encourage the people who are passing by and the people who are looking at the goods on our table to be like, oh, this is, like, you know, a healthier recipe option for me, and I can use food grown from someone in our community. So I think doing things like that and being that voice in your community that is encouraging people to eat healthier is definitely the first step. I've noticed a lot, like with me, it's you have the responsibility to kind of set an example. So, for example, I run around kind of a general same area around where our house is. So I do running routes, and I see the same people on those routes. And even I just see, like, people will come up to me when I'm at the grocery store, and they drive by our area all the time and always see me running. And so they'll mention something and talk about how, like, oh, I couldn't do that, you know? And so instead of saying, like, oh yeah, I know it's so hard, I say, no, you absolutely can. Just start slow, walk a mile every day, or walk 5 minutes, see what you can do. So I say that to say that I think us as people who live this lifestyle should set an example, and that will inspire other people who may not just live this lifestyle you know, by default.
And Gabby's gone a lot further than just setting an example. She's, like, formed a running club and such. And we're also talking about how with our local fire department that we're both on, we have some volunteers who could definitely be in better shape. So we've talked about how we can help bring their health up, not just to get our fire department in better shape, because that's also our tribe. You know, that's the people we care the most about, because we are on the, you know, we're out working wrecks on the interstate and stuff with them every day, and we are, like, responsible for their safety out there. So it's really no different than when we're just here back at home. We still feel a responsibility for the safety and well-being of our crew, of our team on the fire department. And so we want to come up with health, and that's where Gabby's really good at these things, is she can make workout plans, and her experience in learning personal training and in her own fitness journey. that's invaluable in the community. And so that's where we all have something we can do. I think we all have some field of like health or health improvement or growing food that we can engage in that's like close to us. For example, for me, it's food. It's the growing of the food. For Gabby, it's probably more of the fitness side of things. But everybody's got something else they do that probably kind of plays into that a little bit. Maybe it's herbs, maybe it's foraging, maybe it's gardening, maybe it's physical fitness, maybe it's some kind of healing like acupuncture, or something more experimental. There's a lot of experimental natural healing methods out there that we're just beginning to learn about. As this global world gets a little bit smaller, we learn about, Eastern things like, for example, acupuncture. A lot of people thought that was gobbledygook. They thought it was just witchcraft or something like that. And it turns out now later we learn the science behind it. You leave behind the terminology that just makes it sound ethereal and super spiritual, and you're like, oh, there's some real science behind this. So I feel like we all have roles to play in not just our health and our family's health, but our community's health as well, because we want healthy communities, we want well-fed communities, we want strong communities, because that's where we live here. You don't want your neighbors to be in bad shape. That doesn't bode well for you. Look at the national level. Our neighbors to the south of us, Mexico and Central and South America, are in bad condition, and then we get herds of refugees coming through here, and that starts at the source. We do a lot of things to make those countries unhealthy, and then we pay the price, and they pay the price, and everybody pays the price. Like, that's a metaphor, of course, but down here at our level, we don't have a responsibility for our neighbors. Our neighbors are responsible for themselves, but we should. We might as well try to help our neighbors be healthier by setting an example, by producing nutritive food, by making solutions in the community, and potentially profiting for them. As we talk about how to sell our goods, we did the last video about how we're modeling our farm with the CSA model, and we are content creators as well. So one thing that we can do here that's kind of our specialty is that we can put messaging out there. We can use our media capabilities to tell people to educate people about health. A lot of people just don't know. They've never been taught about carbs or about just the most basic healthcare things. And we can educate the community about what they're eating, how they're hurting themselves, and how much better their lives would be if they were healthier. And then we can actually make that profitable. We can make helping people profitable. I don't see any problem with that. I really think that's how we should all be running our businesses. And so our farm can provide solutions for people and provide solutions for us, because that gives us a new pathway to sell things. But we've also educated people on how to improve their health with natural foods. Yeah,
and by helping people help themselves, essentially, by taking care of their health and not making them so dependent. It's kind of a political act in a way, because if you're helping create more self-sufficient people around you and people who do not have those dependencies anymore, then they're not going to, it could change their kind of political thought process as well too, and make them less dependent on services that a lot of people think we need.
Because if I put my tinfoil hat on for a moment, I would say that I think the powers that shouldn't be, I think that they intentionally keep people broke and hungry and unhealthy, and hungry was
and living off processed foods. Well,
I didn't mean hungry.
You can buy a lot of processed foods and you can still be hungry.
Yeah,
because those foods don't.
They're not and a weak, unthinking, unhealthy population is easily controlled. And it makes sense that that's what, everything from the corporate world to governance, that's what they would want, is unhealthy people. That's why they put out food pyramids. That's why they put out things that are blatantly, obviously designed to make us as unhealthy as possible. It's why they serve pizza in schools and literally call it a vegetable. Like, I believe that was a USDA classification, was pizza was a vegetable. So it's a rebellious act to make your community healthy. Anything you do to improve your community is a rebellious act. It flies in the face of the agenda of what a large corporatized system is going to want. And so and also you mentioned self-sufficiency. Like, if your neighbors aren't self-sufficient, you are not in a secure position. That's why we believe in building community. We love being a part of a community, and we like to think we do things altruistically, but also a lot of this is just from a prepper perspective. Things really are going downhill by a lot in just about any way you can measure. Things are getting bad. Societal cohesion, the economy, obviously, our food supply, our supply chains for everything, the domestic as well as the international scene in regards to potential for war and everything. Like, everything's really going downhill. We don't know how rough it's going to get, but I know for sure I do not want to be surrounded by hungry, poor neighbors. That's a recipe for disaster. You can be as gung-ho as you want. You can buy all the guns in the world, but you're not going to be able to stay up all night long. And you're not going to outlast or outwit a very hungry neighbor. On the other hand, well-fed neighbors and healthy, successful neighbors and happy neighbors are your allies instead of your enemies. And so that's why no matter where you're at, you have to be building community. Even if your plan is to go find an intentional community or to move elsewhere, for now, you are where you are. We got to be building this community and making these solutions around us in terms of food security and health and economic self-sufficiency and all of the above. In fact, New York Redneck has a good point. We are only as strong as our weakest member. Yeah. And whether you like it or not, the members of your community, your actual surrounding neighbors, those are your neighbors. They are on your team or they're against you. There's no if things get rough, there's no in between. So you might as well look at your neighbors and say, if I can possibly convert them to be an ally and an ally who is secure in life and healthy and happy and all of that, if I can make that happen, I'm going to be in a better position as a prepper. So that's really one of the driving reasons behind why we do what we do. But also we get excited about health because we've both had our own journeys traveling towards better health, and we've watched it change our lives. For me, I think the biggest change is I've gotten healthier because I was living the musician lifestyle, the bachelor lifestyle for a long time, and just eating ramen noodles and drinking so much and consuming just everything that I should not have, which is, kind of encouraged in the musician life and being on the road a lot. I was just eating fast food and all of that. When I stopped doing all that, it was pretty sudden. So I was really able to see the difference. The biggest change to me was my mentality. And a big part of it was, I think, not drinking any more fluoridated water or anything like that. And it just felt like my IQ went up. And that my mind opened up more. I feel like I walked out of a mental matrix that was just caused by poor nutrition and poor living. And what's exciting to me is that I felt this massive change, but I'm barely on this journey. I'm still eating processed foods. We're still having to buy a lot. My sleep schedule is absolutely insane. So there's still a lot of improvements I have yet to make, but that's exciting to me to realize that my lifestyle has improved so much just by making little changes and by eating food that I grow, and to realize that that's probably still only 20% of my diet, to realize that there's 80% of my diet that's going to change and become better. That means that probably by a factor of 5, everything else is going to improve in my life. So that's really exciting to think about. Yeah. Mary Flash, good to see you in here. It's comforting knowing my neighbors are in with utilizing our extra property as a community garden. That is awesome. We get very excited about community gardens. We love community gardens. We're looking at trying to start our second one here. Gardening with neighbors to me is the most fun thing. I am really kind of a loner type person. I am very introverted. So it was surprising to me to learn how much I love to garden with my neighbors, but I do. We're currently gardening with three neighbors total now. And this is just the news. We've only been here, 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yeah.
At our last property, we were gardening. At the peak, we had three neighbors that were growing up. And so we already have 3 folks on the block that we've started trading seedlings with and helping them garden. We've got a neighbor kid who's been coming over and he just helps me out and learns to garden. That's really fun. And then we've got our neighbor who's been helping us build this house, and he's an avid gardener already. And so we trade a lot of seedlings back and forth and implements. We had to do a little bit of tilling last year. I think we borrowed a tiller from him. Yeah. We're going to no-till, of course, but sometimes that first year you have to till a little bit. And another neighbor down the road, we just gave her some tomatoes plants from Cindy, who may be on here today. And then she wants to give us some cucumbers, I believe, and some peppers. Yeah, we're low on cucumbers, so that'll be good. And it's a really great, besides being fun and interactive, it makes a lot of sense because you're just going to have bad years for certain vegetables sometimes for no reason. And your neighbor across the street in the same soil, for some reason, they will have a bumper crop of the thing you failed to grow. I remember at the last property, our neighbors did really well with cucumbers. We did terrible that year, but we did really well with radishes. We had more radishes than we knew what to do with. And so we just swapped. Or just gave each other our surplus, and it worked out perfectly. And that's the more people get doing that and the more interactive, the more of your diet will really go back to being grown well. And then also, we're always kind of propagandizing everybody out there with regenerative grazing practices, because not grazing, but regenerative growing practices. A lot of people out there are still putting the fertilizers in and using pesticides, and they still don't understand how much easier and more abundant growing things regeneratively and from a permaculture framework is. So we're having a lot of fun pushing these new ideas out into the community. One of these days I'll do a video about the patch of land that we have up there that we're gardening. Obviously the whole property is a garden. We're gardening every bit of this property, even the septic field. But the top part has this strip that's probably about 100 by, or probably about, no, it's less than 100. It's probably about 70 by 20.
Yeah.
It's a thin strip, but it's visible from the road. The rest of this property is like what you see. It's very private. But that one strip of property is really public. And so we're having fun with like making that our visible garden so we can show our neighbors what we're doing, because as much of a prepper as I am, I do not hide my food production, because hungry people are going to figure out that you're growing food. So I would much rather my neighbors know I'm growing food, and I encourage them to grow food and push seedlings out into the community and push annuals and perennials and knowledge out into the community and get more people gardening. And I've just found it's easy. When you start gardening, people just, it's almost like your fair game. When you're in your front yard and you're gardening, yeah, people gravitate to you. They just want to come talk. They want to hang out. They want to see what you're doing. And it invites them in. It's like the most inviting, least violent thing you can do, gardening. Like, who's threatened by a gardener? And so you develop relationships, but like, I've just seen a lot of neighbors get inspired. Once you start gardening, they start gardening. And
setting
stick
an
with
example,
it.
Like I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly, like the health thing. And that really
sometimes
plays
just doing
into it.
those things in public.
Yeah,
not keeping them private.
And there's been this weird thing in America where people are like almost like scared to garden. It's one of those things that's been associated with poverty. You know, we all grow lawns because we're mimicking the aristocracy, where they would grow a lawn in front of their house to show, hey, I don't need to grow food because I can just have other people do it for me because I'm so wealthy and egotistical. I have to show that off. And we still have that mentality a little bit. And so by gardening intensively, you know, and making it a part of our life. Sorry, the chickens are being a little noisy over there. By doing so, we bring it back into the Overton window. We make it acceptable within the community and kind of encouraged. And it's fun because you're seeing it just take off here in the county. It's always been a tradition in this rural area, but it seems like it's really coming back, and young people are starting to do it as well. Mary says we've decided to have two gardens, a community garden and a private garden. That's cool. Yeah. For one, you're getting the redundancy in there, so that's a great idea. And also, when you're in a community garden, you have a lot of new starts and trade. There's a dynamic where you're just trading a lot of new things and getting a lot of new seeds saved. So really, community gardens are something everybody should do. Even if you have way more land than you need, you should still like get involved in the community garden. It's such a good experience for so many reasons. The chickens really want to get in on this.
They have lots of opinions.
Yeah, They're very opinionated. They said they said they want us to be vegetarians.
Yeah, but, they said chicken is not good.
Yeah, but I tend to disagree. We are probably coming up on freezer time for a couple of those chickens. Looking forward to that. Let's see. New York Redneck says gardening with Ozzy is the pizzeria I garden at. That is cool. I remember you mentioned that, gardening at a business. Yeah, gardening at a pizzeria is so cool. The place, like, there's so many areas that have strips of land. There's businesses and churches and organizations that have strips of land that are like just sitting there. A lot of them would love to have somebody take over the maintenance of that part of the land so they don't have to hire landscapers. So if you don't have land, or even if you do have land, approaching local churches, local schools, local businesses, whatever's around you, public lands or guerrilla gardening is so invaluable. There's so much growing space around us, and a lot of it can be planted out with perennials and low maintenance things where you can just set and forget a food forest. Like if you think about it, really just about every park should probably be that, just food forests everywhere. I remember I was in Santa Barbara doing a show a while back, and I was walking this pathway down to the beach, and I walked through this one city park where they'd planted out a bunch of orange trees. And so I just got to pick oranges while walking down to the beach. And it was the most incredible experience of my life. Well, maybe not the most, but it was incredible. It was really fun. And that, if I were a tourist type, that would make me return to that place. I would go back there and stay and have a vacation and spend my money because it was such a positive experience. So I think a lot of businesses and municipalities, not that I want to promote any kind of like government activity, but if it's going to exist, by planting out food forests on public lands or on private lands or in businesses, they can enhance their business's experience or their organization's experience, and really invite the community in, which is generally the whole point of a brick and mortar business or organization is generating buzz and bringing people into your space. So there's so many opportunities to create that around you. Yeah, from pizzerias. I remember, I think I mentioned last week, from Pastor's Farm, Billy was mentioning how he used to, I believe he was working, I think as an electrician, and I might be getting this wrong, so sorry, Billy, if I mess up your story, but he was living in an RV, and at his place of work, he was running chickens and gardening at a grassy median in the parking lot. And those kind of things are just so much fun to me. Because there's solutions that anybody could do, whether you are low income or live in the city or an apartment, you're just starting out in life, or you are homeless or just completely broke. There's always a way to garden. There's always a way to homestead. There's so much land around us. We live in a country that is still extremely relatively, like compared to other nations, we have a very low population compared to our space. And you see it everywhere. There's so much wasted space in this nation. So it's like if we have a food crisis, we don't really have a space crisis. We don't have a farming crisis. We have all the space we need. We're just doing things wrong. So it's up to us to change this, to stop our communities from being food deserts, to stop our neighbors from being unhealthy and dying of diabetes and of being overweight and of having all these comorbidities that can be deadly. Because regardless of the reality of this virus, what we've done for the last year as a society is completely destroy our immune system with locking down our food sources and our restaurants and keeping people in a constant state of stress and fear and taking their jobs away and their access to nutritive food, and making them shelter themselves from exposure to pathogens. All of the things we've done and the social distancing, like preventing people from getting sick, is not good. We are weakening everybody's immune system at a global scale. So I can only see that ending in real viruses spreading really quickly, because weak immune systems in a culture combined with malnutrition, stress, war, all of the things that we're coming up to in this cycle, to me implies that we probably are going to be experiencing some pretty real viruses at some point. So that's another good reason to be getting your community's health up to par, because things are not going to rip through your community so fast if people are healthier. Because as we saw, again, regardless of the reality or what's a lie or what's not with COVID, it's obvious that having comorbidities like being overweight or just eating tons of sugar, alcohol, smoking, all of these unhealthy activities.
It'll increase your chances of negative.
Yeah, it's going to make you die.
Yeah,
like
no matter what you have.
Yeah. So we have to be the solutions. The government is not going to be the solution. They're the enemy. They are there to make us unhealthy. Same with most of the corporate interests. Like, we live in a nation where Bayer owns Monsanto. The people who make money from us being sick, this old former Nazi company that own our food supply. And in what world is that going to end well? The people who run our food supply also run our medicinal supply. Like, they make money from us being sick. They are going to, of course, feed us terrible, nutritionless, synthetic foods. And that's what's happening at every level right now in the global economy. Is they are pushing synthetic food. They're pushing more processed food. They're pushing anti-nutrition, basically. And so we have to step up, stand up, and we have to provide solutions that are accessible, that people with or without money can afford and access. And we have a wonderful opportunity to make money off of it the whole time. Like, what a time to be alive when we have this opportunity to go back to small growers being actually in the black and financially feasible again. Like, it's very exciting. Mary says we have a lack of knowledge crisis. Amen. Yeah. It's amazing what people just don't know, but it's amazing what I didn't know a few years ago. Like, I'm amazed at how terribly I was living and the consequences that I was reaping from that style of living. And it's like, a lot of times we do know better, but we don't know how easy the solutions are. A lot of people, they go into the grocery store and they see the organic food supply and they're like, or the organic food prices, or they go to Whole Foods and like, I just can't afford to feed my family on that. I just can't do it. Mm-hmm. And then they try gardening. They end up spending $80 to get a tomato to grow. And, they give up after that first try gardening. And so one thing I just encourage people to do around me is like, just garden through the problems, keep going, garden more. When stuff fails, garden more. I had some really big failures on the farm this week, and it's always a little crushing when you lose a crop, but that's what's going to happen. And every time you ruin a plant or you kill a crop, you learn something. Mistakes are money in farming. And so I really try to encourage that, and I try to encourage people to just amass knowledge, just absorb the incredible plethora of free knowledge out there on YouTube and in books and all over the internet. There's so many opportunities to better yourself and to improve your knowledge about growing food and about living a healthier life. Mary says, this is why we need to educate ourselves on natural cures also. Yeah, that's a whole new rabbit trail and something I'm excited to learn more about. I'm starting to really dig into herbal healing. I'm probably mispronouncing this, but Marjorie Wildcraft, she's here on YouTube. She's a wealth of information. She has a lot of courses on herbal healing. And I certainly know that once I started including wild foraged herbs that are medicinal in just all of my meals, rather than learning about the applications of all of those different herbs for different, like curing different ailments, I just started including them in all my dishes. And that's when my health just completely changed and improved. But I'm excited to learn how to actually process herbs for healing, and to make tinctures, and to make, topical applications and things like that. Because it's really cool when you realize that we do have the power to cure a lot of ailments with just what you can grow on a property like this. Not everything. Like, you can grow all the herbs you want. It's not going to set a broken leg. There are things you need healthcare, and that's why we, are trying to have a binder full of like plans and numbers, and to have contact information for chiropractors and everything from chiropractors to psychologists to, like every field from mental to physical health.
Professionals who align with our values.
Exactly. And that could include standard doctors. I'm not anti-Western medicine by any stretch of the imagination. Again, if I break my arm, I'm going to a pretty standard healthcare provider. But there are still individual doctors out there. Gabby did a great article on Finding Country about the last independent doctor in our county. There are still independent doctors who have no connection to these big hospitals. They have no connection to this nightmare medical fascist system that's taking over our nation. And they often need support and need business. So take your business to them. Same with like midwives and things like that. Like, take your business to the people who are providing solutions.
With them as well.
Yeah, a whole different experience. Like, is there anybody who likes to be in a hospital? No. They're antiseptic. They feel like a shiny morgue, basically. And like, whereas you go to your family doctor or a family practitioner is probably in his house or in an office that's a lot more homey, and their interactions with you, are you going to feel like a human being? Is it going to cost you more? Yes and no. I mean, the hospital systems are designed to bleed you dry. With a doctor, you're probably like an actual private practitioner. You're going to actually get a price. You're going to know what you're spending. And I personally don't really believe in health insurance anyway. I think we should put our money into savings and investments, and hire and actually take sovereignty and control of our healthcare. Really say, like, not barter, but like negotiate. Yeah, say, how much is the service? I'm not going to just let you treat me and then send me a bill. How much is the service I'm paying for? Let me compare prices with other people. It's a business just like any other. And because we've forgotten that, they've taken advantage of it. And now healthcare is completely unaffordable. It's not an insurance problem. It's a problem across the board of unaffordability. There is no solution. You could have it taxpayer funded, or you could have it privately funded. It doesn't matter. You just can't afford healthcare the way it is, because it's such an incredibly centralized and inefficient system. But I don't think we can fix that system, or should even try. We should just make our own solutions. What else have we got? Gan, spit that truth. Howdy, good seeing you in there. Let's see, we're already at 37 minutes. Time is flying by. We are having fun. Looks like it's getting a little darker. I was hoping we could get all the way to 8 o'clock before it got dark, but I don't think it's going to. We may end up going a little bit short today, just because we do have these chickens to put away. I don't know if you can see, but we got some brand new poultry netting back there. So we're excited to start doing that. That's going to be a major component in our system, being able to run our chickens all over the property, because this property, it's not like a typical farm. Excuse the mess, because we are still moving. But there's not any one big field. There's no large centralized food production areas. So our ability to move chickens around to different patches is going to be really invaluable. Because really their job is to produce fertility for us as much as it is to give us eggs and all of that. New York Redneck says they look delicious. Shh, don't tell them. They think they're only for eggs. We're trying to do crossbreeds so they're both for eggs and for meat as well. Let's go on, since we got time, and I feel like we actually got through the healthcare topic as much as I had to say about it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about my chicken system, because it's fun. What we're trying to do with that is we have a kind of a policy for all animals on the farm. Any animal we bring on to the property, we want to have enough of them to breed, because if we're truly self-sufficient, then we can replace our stock, and they are also paying for themselves. So if I have rabbits or chickens or sheep or any kind of animal, I want to have a couple of bucks and then plenty of females for them to breed with. So that way, if a raccoon gets in and kills a couple or kills one, or a disease comes through, it increases my odds of still being able to rebuild my flock or my herd. And so to breed my chickens, though, I want to be able to actually maintain the separate breeds. And so I currently have 4 right there. And so we're doing small solutions with the chickens. Instead of just having one main way that we raise chickens, we're actually trying several out, and we're using that as an opportunity, or we're going to use it as an opportunity to segregate our hens and our different breeds. So they're all together right now, but we're working on the second chicken tractor, And then we're working on a stationary, kind of more of a composting system where we will have chickens in a more traditional coop. And that's where we're going to run all of our mulches and composts through. And they'll be in a condensed area, tilling it up and such. So we'll have probably 3 or 4 small chicken operations going at the same time. So they won't all be living together. There'll be some of the stationary ones. There'll be some that live in tractors that just go back and forth in between rows and between crop rows. And then there'll be a lot of the ones that run around in the poultry netting. And so we'll have like our Wyandottes or our Rhode Island Reds or our whatever different breeds we have. We'll have the roosters and the hens who are of the same breed all together. And then when they have babies, when they go broody, we can put them in the incubator or just let them go through the natural process. And then we'll have that actual breed. We'll actually know what the breed is. And we'll either keep them if we need to replenish our stocks, or we will sell them. With all of our animal systems, what we're trying to do with selling them is basically just pay for the feed. So with my rabbits, if I can sell my rabbits at a price that pays for the feed, that means that all of the meat and all of the manure they produce is free. And so that means that if I scale up my rabbit production, which is what I'm trying to do, I'm working on a rabbit housing that's going to probably be able to produce several hundred kits a year. If I can actually make those sales and make it profitable, then that means that every drop of fertility on my farm, all of my inputs, because the only inputs I use are manure. I don't use any fertilizers other than that. And that's how I make my compost. That means all of the inputs on my farm are already paid for, and it's simple. I don't have to run around all day long chasing different things and trying to get, old vegetables from restaurants. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's a great solution as well, but I'm just trying to minimize the time input. So that's how our chicken system is going to work. But the poultry netting is going to be a big key, because we can kind of mob graze chickens over one area for a short period of time, move them to another area. And what's cool about that netting is we can also run it down into the forest. I can't run this chicken down in the forest. It gets way too steep. We've got all this land that's really hard for us to use in any productive way. But of this 5 acres, about 4 of it is really steep forest. So we want to use some of it for our traditional agriculture. And there's a lot of good bugs out there, a lot of rotting wood with lots of bugs that chickens love to chew on. A lot of stuff for chickens out in that forest. So what we're doing is we park the tractor up at the top, and then we can run the netting down deep into the woods in a long strip, and then just move the tractor one length and run and move that netting down again the next day. And so we're really able to farm in a way that I think it's not going to be a detriment long term. They might mess with a few ecosystems a little bit initially as they scratch up the ground, but they're also going to be returning so much fertility to that forest and to that land that I think it'll be a net benefit. And we're only going to have them in one section for one day, so we're not going to have them decimating an area of forest. They're just going to move through it like any herd of animals would, really. That's really how in the wild most animals are going through in kind of herds or flocks all at once. And then they're moving on to the next area. So I think it's going to be a pretty efficient chicken system that's going to spread fertility all over our land, but also cut down on our grain bill, hopefully eventually to nothing, because we're following the chicken tractors in the grazing areas with planting. Once they make an area fertile, we go and we plant it in. And I'm planting in on the flat areas, on the surfaces, I'm planting things like clovers and Timothy hay and just normal orchard mixes and fescue and just typical kind of pasture, high protein foods, but also lots of perennials along the way. We're going to be lining like the whole length of this septic field, all down there. We'll be lined with things like mulberry and maples and some of the existing sumacs and things or willows. There's a lot of tree forages that produce really good high protein foods that chickens and rabbits and other animals love. And so that means that my protein, my feed for my animals isn't just here on the ground, it's up there. Like, that could all be my pasture. All of those trees can be my pasture. And so you think about that, you're reaching 30, 40, 50 feet underground with those roots. You're accessing all of those minerals and those nutrients way down there, and you're bringing them up to the surface, and you're feeding your animals off of them. And they're also storing water, and they're so much more efficiently capturing the abundance on this land. And that's something that we just don't take advantage of as farmers of livestock that we need to, because I really think that's the only way I can truly be self-sufficient. I don't have enough land here to just graze enough animals to really feed a family and have surplus to sell. So I really need to be more creative and tap into the perennial abundance out there. Let's see, what have we got here? Mary says, my husband brought home a rooster and my girls are not happy. Yeah, roosters are mean, man. Like, they protect the hens, but there's not a lot of consent that goes on, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm glad that humans don't learn from chickens how to behave in terms of romance and all of that. 'Cause, yeah, they're mean. We just realized we had another rooster. It's low on the totem pole on the pecking order, so it got kind of pecked at. So we didn't know it was a rooster until today. A couple of them were misbehaving out there, so I realized, oh, we have 2 roosters, which is good. Roosters are an eternal battle. They can be such monsters, or they can be really nice. We got one really nice rooster.
We got one really nice one. Yeah.
Roosters are fun because they have so much personality, but probably if you raise chickens, you know what it's like when you get that really mean rooster that attacks you and he just starts to say like, hey, I want to be put in the crock pot. But hopefully we haven't had that problem. We'll see. But I don't mind a mean rooster because we need to eat some of them anyway, so it's good to have volunteers. Well, shoot, I feel like we're actually kind of reaching a natural stopping point here at 45 minutes. I feel like we had some good exchange about the different ideas for healthcare, and I want to keep talking about this as kind of a regular thing because most of what we talk about right now on this channel is theoretical. We do a lot of theory because we're new. We're not master homesteaders. We're learning as we go, and we're making plenty of mistakes as we do so. But we want to like say what our theories are and what we're trying out, and then just keep everybody updated on these processes. You know, it's like I can learn permaculture all day, but I'm not going to know until I actually get out here and get my hands dirty about what works and what doesn't. But then we can convey those successes to everybody on the channel, and then people can take them and expand those ideas and improve them and add their own as well. That's what's so fun about this dynamic, and that's why I love doing community hours so much. So do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, just if you guys have any other thoughts about healthcare, and the homestead, just keep putting them in the comments, and we'd love to hear more about your experience.
And Mary says, keep us updated on the festival. Yes, we are doing so much this week on that.
Yes.
We got the contract signed. We got most everything locked down. So within about a week or 2, we're actually going to be truly able to announce
making
stuff.
Some finishing touches on the website.
Logos,
logos
everything. Getting T-shirts made. They're going to be awesome. So we're about to be able to release a lot more information about the festival, and we hope to see and we hope to see a ton of people there. It's going to be it's one of the most exciting things we've ever done. And
yeah, we're really excited for it. So tell all your friends and family, and
we'll have a lot.
Everyone you know.
We'll post all the information here. It'll be on this channel, and we'll hope to see a lot of y'all down here. In the meantime, everybody, I hope y'all stay safe, you be well, and happy homesteading.